At 2:47 a.m., my phone shattered sizzy silence. The room was completely dark except for the green glow of my alarm clock. Nobody calls at that hour unless something terrible has happened. I answered, and all I heard at first was rushed breathing. Then came Dr. Miller from County Medical Center. His voice shook. "Arthur, you need to get here now. Christian was in a serious car accident, but this isn't an ordinary crash. Come alone. Don't tell Claire. My name is Arthur. I'm 69 years old, and for the last 8 years I've let everyone believe I was nothing more than a bitter, stubborn old man. I wore that mask for one reason: my son-in-law, Christian. I had distrusted him from the day he entered our family, but even then I never imagined how ugly the truth really was. He knew exactly how to make people adore him. He wore polished shoes, carried an easy smile, and never missed a detail. He brought my wife fresh carnations every week because he knew they were her favorite. Every morning he made Claire toast with the edges slightly burned, exactly the way she liked it. He even spent a week building a wooden swing for my grandchildren. Before my wife passed away, she squeezed my hand and whispered that Claire had married a wonderful man. I stayed silent because I couldn't explain what my instincts kept screaming. I'd spent half my life reading people, and Christian didn't move like an honest man. When he looked at Claire, I didn't see love. I saw possession, a hunter studying easy prey. Little by little, he pushed my daughter away from me. Claire believed I was just an old father who couldn't stand seeing her happy. Whenever I visited, Christian greeted me with warmth and respect. The second Claire left the room, the smile disappeared. His eyes turned cold. Over the years, he quietly took out multi-million-dollar life insurance policies on Claire, always dressed up as responsible financial planning. She saw devotion. I saw calculation. When I hung up with Dr. Miller, a knot tightened in my chest. Something was terribly wrong. I grabbed my truck keys and stepped into the pouring rain. The 43-mile drive to County Medical Center felt endless. The wipers beat against the windshield while my thoughts raced faster than the truck. By the time the hospital finally came into view beneath the pale neon lights, my hands were locked around the steering wheel. The smell of disinfectant hit me as soon as I walked through the glass doors. The corridors were nearly empty, my footsteps echoing through the silence. At the far end of the hallway, standing in the shadows outside the emergency room, Dr. Miller was waiting. One look at his face told me whatever I was about to hear would change everything. Dr. Miller wasn't wearing a white coat anymore. He stood in a sweat-soaked navy surgical uniform, his face drawn with exhaustion. The moment he saw me, he motioned for me to follow without saying a word. He led me into a small office beside the recovery unit, locked the door behind us, then pulled every curtain shut. The careful routine made my pulse race. Through the narrow window, I saw Christian lying motionless in a hospital bed. His face was cut and bruised. An oxygen mask covered his mouth, and monitors echoed through the silent hallway. The polished, confident man everyone admired had been reduced to a broken body. I didn't feel pity. I felt dread. "Doctor." Miller met my eyes and lowered his voice. "The crash didn't cause his condition, Arthur. He blacked out before the car left the road." He handed me a lab report. I ordered blood work before surgery. My eyes dropped to the highlighted results. Thallium. The levels were dangerously high. Miller explained that it wasn't a fast-acting poison. It built up over time, destroying the nervous system until the victim finally collapsed. Someone had been slipping it into Christian's food for weeks. A cold wave ran through me. Who wanted him dead? Had he crossed the wrong people? Miller stepped closer. "Christian isn't the real victim here. Whoever worked with him decided he knew too much. They're cleaning up loose ends." Then his expression hardened. Before he lost consciousness, he kept trying to say one thing. He paused just long enough for my heart to stop. "Go home, right now. Your daughter and your grandchildren are in danger." My mind went blank. Christian was lying in intensive care, so why was my family the target? I searched Miller's face for answers, but he stayed silent. Instead, he placed a thick brown envelope sealed with black tape into my hands. "Don't open it here," he said. "Read it in your truck, then move fast. You don't have much time." I ran back into the pounding rain, climbed into my pickup, and slammed the door. Rain exploded across the roof while I ripped away the black tape with shaking hands. Under the weak dome light, I pulled out the first document. The photo was unmistakably Christian's, but the name beneath it wasn't. It read, Raymond Vance. My pulse spiked. The file identified him as a career con artist under active FBI investigation. Christian had never existed. Raymond Vance had built an entirely different life before marrying Claire. She wasn't even his first wife. She was his third target. The report detailed 2 previous marriages. Both women had died in what authorities initially ruled tragic accidents. One supposedly slipped down a staircase. The other died from severe food poisoning. After each death, Raymond collected massive life insurance payouts worth nearly $4 million. My hands clenched tighter with every page. Then I reached the last document. It was Claire's newest life insurance policy. The payout clause became active the following week. The insured amount was $6 million. My chest tightened. Christian Raymond had never married my daughter because he loved her. He had been patiently preparing her to become his next payday. I slammed my fist into the steering wheel so hard the horn blasted through the storm. The truck's horn echoed through the storm. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. For 8 years, I'd watched that predator wrap himself around my family, and I hated myself for not tearing him away sooner. But the worst part of the file was still waiting. Tucked behind the insurance records was a handwritten list of Raymond Vance's accomplices. He had never worked alone. In both of his previous marriages, a woman had appeared after each victim's death, pretending to be a grieving relative, while quietly helping him handle the funeral, transfer assets, and disappear with the money. One name had been circled in red. The moment I read it, my stomach dropped. Rachel, the woman Christian had introduced as his struggling biological sister, who'd recently moved here for medical treatment. According to the file, her real name was Rebecca Shaw, a professional con artist wanted by federal investigators. She hadn't arrived by coincidence. She had moved into Claire's house just 3 weeks earlier. Doctor. Miller's warning suddenly made perfect sense. Christian hadn't been poisoned by a stranger. Rebecca had poisoned her own partner. If Raymond died before collecting Claire's insurance, she intended to take the entire $6 million for herself. And if she was tying up loose ends, Claire's family was next. I looked at the dashboard clock, 3:15 a.m. Claire was still sitting beside Christian's hospital bed, leaving only Rebecca alone with my grandchildren. Noah was 4. Lily was 6. 2 innocent children asleep under the same roof as a woman willing to murder her own partner for money. I buried the accelerator. My old pickup lunged through the rain while every second felt like another step toward disaster. I couldn't stop thinking about Rebecca's smile the week before as she poured me tea. Her voice had sounded warm, but her eyes had been empty. Now I knew exactly what I'd seen. Claire's house finally appeared at the end of the winding road. Every window was dark except for a faint light that flickered once upstairs before disappearing. The children's bedroom. My heart nearly stopped. I killed the headlights and rolled the truck to the side of the road, unwilling to warn anyone inside that I had arrived. Rain hammered the windshield as I grabbed my phone and called my younger brother, Hank, a former Marine. He answered before the first ring had fully ended. "Get to Claire's house now," I said. "Bring whatever you can use to defend yourself. Rebecca is inside with the kids." I hung up, stepped into the freezing rain, and crossed the muddy yard as quietly as I could. The spare key was still hidden beneath the flower planter by the back door. I slid it into the lock and eased the door open without a sound. Darkness swallowed the house. The faint smell of maple syrup from the children's dinner still hung in the air, and somewhere upstairs, I heard the soft creak of a floorboard. The sweet smell of maple syrup faded beneath the heavy scent of Rebecca's cheap perfume. I moved slowly through the living room, careful not to let the old floor betray me. Just as I reached the foot of the stairs, I heard soft footsteps coming down. I slipped into the darkness beneath the staircase and held my breath. A flashlight beam from Rebecca's phone drifted across the walls as she descended one step at a time. She carried a large travel bag, and under the pale light, her face looked strangely calm. Not frightened, not grieving, just cold. She reached the last step, paused, then suddenly switched off the flashlight. The house fell into total darkness. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. I could hear her breathing. She knew something was wrong. Before she could react, I stepped from the shadows and snapped on my flashlight, aiming it straight into her eyes. Rebecca recoiled, shielding her face. But the surprise lasted only a heartbeat. A pleasant smile returned as if she'd been expecting a midnight visitor. "Mr. Arthur," she said softly, "you scared me. What are you doing here?" I ignored the question. My eyes locked onto the travel bag, then to the dark red stain drying across the back of her hand. Every instinct I had screamed that it wasn't paint. "Where are the children?" I asked. Without missing a beat, she slipped her stained hand behind her back. "They're asleep upstairs," she replied. "Christian was hurt, so I'm packing a few things for the hospital." She took a step toward the door. I didn't move an inch. We stood face to face, blocking each other's path. "Move," she said, her voice losing its sweetness. "No," I answered. The smile disappeared. For the first time, I saw the woman hidden behind the mask. Her eyes were flat, empty, and completely without mercy. She slowly lowered the travel bag onto the floor, while her other hand slid inside her jacket pocket. I didn't know if she was reaching for a scalpel, another vial of poison, or something even worse. I only knew I couldn't let her get past me. At 69 years old, I had no illusions about winning a fair fight. But this wasn't about me anymore. It was about my daughter and my grandchildren. I bent my knees, ready to throw myself at her if I had to. Then bright headlights suddenly washed across the windows. Tires screeched outside, followed by pounding footsteps racing toward the back door. "Hank." Rebecca realized she'd lost her chance. With a furious scream, she launched herself straight at me, trying to knock me aside and escape. I absorbed the hit, planted my feet, and drove every ounce of strength I had into one hard shove. She crashed onto the wooden floor, and the travel bag burst open beside her. Several small glass bottles scattered across the room, shattering on impact. The back door flew open as Hank stormed inside. Within seconds, he had Rebecca pinned to the floor. I didn't waste a moment watching the struggle. I sprinted upstairs, burst into the children's bedroom, and found Noah and Lily still asleep in their beds. Relief nearly brought me to my knees. I gathered both of them into my arms, carried them downstairs, and rushed through the rain to my truck before Rebecca had any chance to break free. I glanced into the rearview mirror. Noah and Lily were still asleep, unaware of how close they'd come to never waking up in that house again. I pointed the truck toward the county sheriff's office, while dawn slowly pushed through the fading storm. By the time I arrived, the rain had stopped, leaving only droplets clinging to the windshield. Hank escorted Rebecca inside with her hands cuffed behind her back. The evidence recovered from her travel bag was overwhelming. The shattered glass vials contained thallium poison, and the forged documents tied her directly to Raymond Vance's operation. There was no innocent explanation left to invent. At the same time, deputies were already on their way to County Medical Center. Christian had survived surgery and regained consciousness. But instead of seeing his family, he opened his eyes to two armed officers waiting beside his bed with an arrest warrant. The perfect husband disappeared the moment those handcuffs came out. Watching everything finally fall apart should have brought me peace. Instead, it lasted only a few minutes. I was sitting alone on a wooden bench outside an interview room, while deputies looked after my grandchildren when my phone began to vibrate. "Claire." I answered immediately, hoping the police had reached her first. They hadn't. Her voice came through the phone like ice. "Are you happy now, Dad? You spent 8 years trying to destroy Christian. Now he's fighting for his life, and you're still accusing him of crimes. And on top of that, you kidnapped my children." I tried to speak, but she never gave me the chance. "Don't ever contact me again." The line went dead. I sat there staring at the silent phone in my hand. Even with Rebecca under arrest and Christian exposed, Claire believed I was the villain. 8 years of manipulation had done exactly what Raymond wanted. It had turned my own daughter against me. I looked through the sheriff's office window as the morning sun broke across the parking lot, but the light never seemed to reach me. How do you save someone who refuses to believe they're in danger? The next 9 days became the longest of my life. Claire ignored every call, every message, every attempt I made to reach her. She locked herself inside the house, refused to see me, and left Noah and Lily with a friend because she no longer trusted anyone, not even her own father. In her mind, I wasn't trying to save her. I was a bitter old man obsessed with destroying the only man she believed had ever truly loved her. The silence inside my house became unbearable. Every night, I sat alone, listening to the furnace tick through the darkness, while the wooden swing Christian had built for my grandchildren swayed gently outside. It was the perfect reminder of how completely he'd fooled everyone, except me. Somehow, the innocent man had become the suspect, and the real monsters had become the victims. Detectives kept asking Claire to review the evidence and speak with investigators, but she refused every time. She insisted the documents were fake, that Christian's real identity had been fabricated, and that someone was framing her husband. Watching my daughter cling to those lies hurt more than anything I'd ever endured. I couldn't even blame her. She had spent 8 years loving a man who never existed, built a family with him, and trusted someone who had quietly planned to cash in on her death. No one could accept a betrayal like that in a single day. So I let her hate me. As long as she and the children were safe, I could carry the burden. On the evening of the 10th day, I was sitting alone at my kitchen table when headlights swept across the front window. A car door closed, followed by slow, uncertain footsteps. The front door opened, and Claire walked inside. Her hair was uncombed, her eyes swollen from days of crying, and she carried a thick stack of police reports against her chest. She stopped in front of me, struggling to speak. Finally, she whispered, "I read everything." For a moment I couldn't move. Those 3 words lifted a weight I'd been carrying since the night Dr. Miller called. Claire stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me, breaking down like the little girl I used to comfort after nightmares. I held her as she cried, saying nothing. She didn't owe me an apology. The only thing that mattered was that she finally knew the truth. 3 months later, the case reached federal court. Every seat in the courtroom was filled as Raymond Vance, once known to us as Christian, was led in wearing an orange prison uniform. The charming smile, the tailored clothes, the perfect husband act, every piece of it was gone. Beside him stood Rebecca Shaw, expressionless to the very end. The evidence left no room for escape. Raymond received 2 consecutive life sentences, without the possibility of parole for murder, fraud, and conspiracy. Rebecca was sentenced to 35 years for poisoning her partner and attempting to murder Claire. When the judge's gavel came down, it felt as though years of lies finally collapsed with it. As people began filing out of the courtroom, an older couple approached me. They introduced themselves as relatives of Raymond's first wife. The gray-haired man shook my hand with tears in his eyes and thanked me for refusing to give up. For the first time in years, his family finally knew what had really happened to the woman they had lost. At that moment, I realized justice doesn't erase the past, but it can finally give the living permission to heal. Outside the courthouse, a gray-haired man gripped my hand. Neither of us said much. We didn't have to. We were 2 fathers who understood exactly what it meant to lose the people we loved and spend years searching for justice. I walked Claire, Noah, and Lily down the courthouse steps beneath the bright afternoon sun. For the first time in a long while, it felt like the nightmare was finally over. As I opened my truck door, I noticed an envelope tucked beneath the windshield wiper. There was no stamp, no return address. Inside was a single typed sentence: "The case may be over, but its lesson will remain." It had been left by the insurance firm's legal team, thanking our family for exposing a scheme that might have claimed even more innocent lives. I folded the note, started the engine, and drove my family home. 2 years passed faster than I ever imagined. The house that had once been filled with fear was now filled with laughter. Claire slowly rebuilt her life, found the strength to move beyond the betrayal, and return to the career she loved. She became a physician at County Medical Center, helping families through some of the darkest days of their lives. Noah and Lily grew taller every season. Hank and I built them a brand new wooden swing, replacing the one that had become a painful reminder of the past. This time, every laugh that echoed across the yard belonged to a family finally at peace. On Thanksgiving afternoon, the house was warm with the smell of roasted turkey and fresh maple desserts. I sat quietly at the dining table, watching my daughter serve dinner while my grandchildren argued over who would get the biggest slice of pie. Moments like that remind you what victory really looks like. Looking back on everything that happened, I've learned 3 lessons worth holding on to. Protect the people you love without hesitation. Never mistake charm for character. And when your instincts tell you something is wrong, don't stay silent just because everyone else thinks you're mistaken. Standing alone is always easier than living with the regret of doing nothing. Just then, Claire smiled at me from across the table. Dad, dinner's getting cold. I smiled back, stood up, and joined my family. Outside, the porch light glowed against the evening sky, steady and unwavering, just like a father's determination to protect the people he loves.